Hi everyone, it's Lindy on from Pink Whisper Designs. Today I've got a really fun fall card to show you. We're going to be using a brand new set from Art Impressions, and let's take a look at that. I stamped these out so you could see exactly what you get in this set, and that little bucket on the bottom right hand corner that we're going to be coloring now is going to either house that little pumpkin with the leaves and flowers or any of your little critters, so you can put anything in that bucket you like. And what I love about that is, I like to mix and match my sets, so this bucket can be used with any other sets you might have where you might want to place something in there, for a floral arrangement or other little critters that you might have, more seasonal critters. So just have some fun with that. And I'm going to color this in with the light gray, and I'm keeping the center part of this little bucket the lightest. These are the Zig Clean Color Real Brush pens that I'm using, and these are a water-based pen. So you could certainly do your blending with a water brush or the blender pen as I'm doing here. I'll just add a few little shadows around that, and again, this bucket could be colored in so many colors depending on the season that you're using it for. So another way to just have some fun, add stripes, polka dots, whatever you want to that. With yellow, sand, and orange, I'll color in the pumpkin. I started with the yellow, adding a little bit of orange, and then that sand color has a little bit of a reddish tint to it, kind of a brownish reddish tint. So it'll be perfect for blending these together. And I added all three of the colors at the same time, and then I'm just going to blend that out. You could certainly add these one at a time and do your blending whatever you feel most comfortable with. And then I'll just add a little shadow of that sand right along each of those little sections of the pumpkin. With beige and mid-brown, I'll go ahead and do the stem, starting with the beige, adding a little mid-brown. I'll do that second pumpkin the exact same way, and then with yellow and deep red, I'll color in the flower. I started with the yellow in the center. I'm just adding that deep red right around the center and pulling it out towards the edges. And then we will come in with a little bit of beige to add a little bit more of a shadow to the inside of that, the center of the flower. And there's that beige that I added, again, just to give a little shadow. And then I'll go ahead and do the leaves. This one I'm using olive green, evergreen, and yellow. And we'll just blend those out. I will add the two greens first, and then at the end I'm going to come in with a little bit of that yellow. It just adds a little highlight, but we'll also be using our white gel pen later to add some additional highlights to these. So don't worry too much about your blending. And then this leaf will be in the yellow and the orange. And I did leave the coloring in. I know it's fun to watch. Some of you are really enjoying the Zig Clean Color Real Brush pens, and so I like to leave that in just in case you want to get some ideas of the different ways you can do your coloring. This one is May Green, green, and yellow. And you can see I'm just adding that shadow sort of down the center of each of the leaves and then pulling out towards the edges. And then back in with a little bit of that yellow. You do want to make sure you clean off that yellow pen after you're done doing this, because it will pick up some of that green. And to do that, just scribble it onto your scrap paper. With deep red, orange, and yellow, let's do this leaf. So we've got some really pretty fall colors going here. We're going to create a really fun spattered background for this entire card, and we're also going to be using the Art Impressions fall leaf frame set to create to kind of just ground the whole scene, and I'll show you that as we go along. So let's finish up this last leaf. And again, for our project today, we're going to be placing this pumpkin and leaves right down into that little bucket. But certainly any of these other little critters would look adorable in that bucket. Let's go ahead and do the mushroom. I'm placing down a little piece of scrap paper because I don't like to rest my hand on the things I've already colored. Again, because these are watercolors, I'm always afraid I'm going to smudge or smear them. So I'm just placing some scrap paper there just to protect it. And then I did decide to come in with a little bit of mid-brown on these mushrooms as well, just for a little bit more shadowing up underneath there. And I really have to say that of all the designs that Bonnie does for art impressions, I love the critters. I love these little sets with all these cute, adorable little critters. I love coloring them in. They're just fun and whimsical. And again, they mix and match so well with the other little sets that you might have. So let's finish up this mushroom, and then we'll go to the shadow pink and add a little pink to the cheeks of this little cat. And then I'm going to use the light gray. I want the cat to be mostly white. I'm just going to add a little shadow of that gray. And then I'll just pull in towards the center. I did add a little pink to the ears as well. And then we'll add a little bit of that pink to the paws. So let's go ahead and add some of that light gray down here. Now, after I colored it all in with the light gray, as I said before, I wanted to keep it mostly looking like kind of a white cat with a little bit of gray. But then I just decided it just didn't have enough shadowing. So you'll see I'll end up coming in with the gray color just to give it a little bit more of a shadow. Just a little bit more depth. You could certainly leave it like this. I think this is fine. But here's where you see I'm coming in with that gray. And it'll just define the little cat a little bit better, but I will leave that little tuft of fur under the chin fairly light, and the one on the top of the head as well. So that's what I did. I just went ahead and added some of these shadows, and I did the rest of that off camera. And then I did come back in with that shadow pink and just add a little bit more pink to those cheeks. And again to the paws, as I mentioned earlier. With gray, brown, beige, and sand, I'm going to color in the little owl. I wanted him to have like a little bit of a grayish tint. And then I did decide that I wanted to add a few browns to him. So I started off with this gray, and I was just kind of blending that out, thinking I might actually leave it like this, which I think you certainly could. But then, I don't know, I just felt I wanted a little bit more of a two-tone look, and I thought the brown would soften it up a little bit. So I'll show you this. Let's finish blending in that gray. We'll add a little shadow right there underneath the eyes. And here on the wing. And then here's where I came in with the beige. And I'm just going to blend it right over the top of that gray. So it'll really give us kind of a beigey gray look. So these two blend together really nicely. And again, I thought it really softened up the owl and gave it a little bit more of a two-tone look. So I'll just kind of add that here and there. And a little extra underneath where the eyes are for a little bit more shadowing. Then I'll just use that beige around the eyes. I'll sort of add that color down towards the bottom and then pull it up towards the top a little bit. And then I did add a little bit of that sand color for the feet and for the nose. Let's go ahead and finish up the last little critter here using beige, light brown, mid-brown, and light gray. And I love this little fox. It's so cute. Again, all these critters, think of these for other projects. Mix and match them. They're just so cute. You could put little hats on them for different, for Halloween, whatever you like. These would be cute, incorporated into almost any of your scenes. I will leave that little tuft of fur under the chin, mostly white. I'm just going to add a little light gray to that here in a second, and then the fur on the bottom of the face and the top of the head as well. I'll place this color right down here, and then I'll just pull up, keeping the top of the head the lightest. And then let's go ahead and do the ears. I will come in with a little bit of brown on the ears. The mid brown, if you look at, I looked at some Fox pictures just to be sure, but a lot of times the tips of the ears are a little bit darker. So I just thought it would be fun to add that little extra of that brown. And here's where I just added that light gray to those tufts of fur and a little bit on the fur on the tail. And what you can do after you're done coloring, and I will do that, I'm going to take a white gel pen and highlight the eyes. I like to just put a little dot of that white gel pen on the eyes when I'm done. Sometimes it gets kind of muted out and with the coloring over the top, so I like to add that little dot. It just brightens everything back up. With the coloring all set, here's where I'll grab that white gel pen. And this is a great way to add your highlights. Again, if your coloring wasn't just the way you wanted it, this really brightens everything up. I added some highlights to each of the little petals on the flower and then down the sides of the pumpkins. And I'll just add that little touch everywhere. And again, I will add it to their little eyes, and look at how that makes their eyes really pop. It's just a little thing that really makes everything come together. I like to take the time to just add all these little details. I think it's the finishing touch on all your hard work. And then for the mushroom, I just added a few dots kind of on those little circles, and then a few dots underneath, just again for a little bit more interest. Now here's that beautiful frame. This is the fall leaf frame set from Art Impressions. I love this, and it also comes with extra leaves as well. For the frame, I've got some cream colored 100-pound cardstock. I'm going to go ahead and die cut this frame. This is a smooth cream color. I am running it through my Spellbinders Platinum Scout machine a couple of times just to make sure I get all that detail. And then I did die cut 3 of these. And I'm going to stack these one on top of the other. I'm using that Nuvo Deluxe adhesive to do my gluing. And I'm going to use my tweezers just to make sure everything's lined up really well. I'll place something heavy on that and let that dry. Once that was dry, I grabbed this beautiful kind of pumpkin-y orange color cardstock. And I'm going to cut that to size so it'll fit right behind this panel. So we're going to be looking into this background. Now at this point you could make this into a shaker card if you wanted to. Next I'll take that rusty hinge. This is the Tim Holtz Distress Spritz. And you want to shake that really well. And then I just like to put the nozzle right into the container and spatter that panel. You will want to heat set that, let that get completely dry, and then I'll add a second layer of color using the Tim Holtz Distress Spritz in Walnut Stain. And these two are going to have this beautiful shimmer to them. That's what's so beautiful about the Spritz, is you get that beautiful shimmer. So I did heat set both of those colors, and then I've got some brown textured cardstock and my rectangle A2 double stitch dies. I'll use that largest die for the brown cardstock, and then I picked a piece of this pattern paper. This is from the Art Impressions Fall Season 2 paper pad. And look at these beautiful patterns that you get. I love these. I love that one with all the little pumpkins on it. I still haven't done a project with those, but I'm really anxious to. So those are really pretty and they all coordinate together nicely. I'll grab that second largest rectangle die. Let's go ahead and die cut these. I'm just going to tape that down temporarily with a little bit of post-it tape, and we'll run those through the Spellbinders Platinum 6 die cutting machine. And place those on a little bit of an angle. It will make it a lot easier to run these big dies through your machine. Now we have all the layering pieces that we need, so let's go to the Portfolio Template Die Set from Art Impressions, which you guys know I use all the time. It has so many dies in it. And I'm going to just use the top section of this little die to create like a little tab at the behind our frame. So I had already stamped that word thankful onto that piece of cardstock that we were using to color with earlier. And so I just left it the way it was. I just cut it down. I just need the little top part. You could certainly restamp this, but that bottom part of this is not going to show. We're going to tuck it right behind this frame. So let's go ahead and place some glue on the back of the frame. I'm going to just pat it onto a paper towel just so that I don't get a lot of extra glue seeping out where I don't want it. That's a fun little trick. If you have a piece of scrap paper or a paper towel, just pat that down and you won't get all that glue kind of seeping through towards the front. I'm just going to round off those edges with my detail scissors. And now we can glue this little tab. So again, I'm going to tuck that right at the top here behind this frame. And that says thankful. Let's go ahead and glue some of these layers together. I'm just centering this. That brown, chocolate brown layer will be the same exact size as the card. So it's an A2 size, which is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. Now we can go ahead and center this. I'm dropping it down just a little bit because of that tab. So I want to have enough room for that. And I also dropped it down a little bit. The tab was actually my excuse to drop the frame down a little bit because I wanted this owl up at the top. And I wanted plenty of room for him to stick up over the top of this frame. So that's really why I added that little sentiment. And then I'm using some 3mm large foam squares to pop up that owl because we do have a lot of dimension on that frame. And then I'm going to use some small foam squares to pop up this little bucket. And here's where you see I'm going to glue in that little pumpkin and leaves, and I love this. This would be pretty on a card all by itself, by the way. Just do a quick little background and add that bucket with the pumpkin and it would be adorable. It would also be really cute if you wanted to create some little place cards. This would be a cute little image to use for your place cards. So let's go ahead and lay out the rest of this scene a little bit. I'm going to tuck that mushroom in behind. So I've raised it up a little bit, but it will get covered with the pumpkin and some leaves, so don't worry about that. I just didn't want it to get lost in there, so I lifted it up a little bit higher. And then I've got those 3D foam squares again, and just trying to keep this level now, and also giving it a little dimension. While I'm adding the rest of these pieces, I do want to mention that all the products I'm using today are listed and linked down below, and also on my blog. So let's add that little cat and the pumpkin. I thought that mushroom just needed to go a little bit higher. It will be behind the pumpkin, so we can have it up a little bit more for some more interest. It was still wet, so I was able to lift it up quickly and then pop that pumpkin right in place. And I'll tuck a little bit of a foam square behind that, again, just to keep everything level. With the Harvest Journal die set, I'm going to grab the sentiment Hello Fall, and I'm also going to grab some of those leaves from this set as well. So let's go ahead and run the Hello Fall through the die cutting machine with that same chocolatey brown that we used earlier. And I'm going to die cut 3 of these because we're going to be gluing these together. This will give us some nice dimension on the sentiment, And here again, you see where I added all that glue and then I just pat it onto the paper towel just to remove all that excess, because when you are stacking up these dies, sometimes you get a lot of that kind of like pushing through that glue and it gets all over the place. So if you just pat it quickly on your scrap paper or your paper towel, you can remove that and you'll still get a really nice adhesion to your cardstock. So now that we have that in place, I'm going to glitter this with my Wink of Stella clear glitter pen. I'm just going to go over the top of all of these letters. That's going to give it a really pretty sparkle. You could certainly use some sparkle cardstock for that sentiment if you prefer that, if that's easier. And then I'll just take that Wink of Stella pen and just add a little sparkle here and there. Now going back to this Harvest Journal die set where we grabbed that sentiment, there's these beautiful leaves on here. So I thought I would add some leaves to the bottom of the project. I just thought I needed a few leaves at the bottom. I will be honest with you, I had these left over from another project, but the way I colored them was to use my Distress Oxide inks. I edged them with a little bit of the gathered twigs and a small foam applicator tool, and I went around each of the leaves that way. And you could certainly use colored cardstock here and just add a little color around the edges. So I'm just going to pop these down at the bottom of this project. I like to use some of my leftovers when I can, and I know I had these left over from a fall project that I did last year. So once those were popped into place, I've got some more of that smooth, creamy color cardstock. It measures 4 1/4 by 11 inches, and I scored it at 5 1/2 inches. So again, that's a standard A2 size card. So let's glue this down. I'll just remove that post-it tape that was left over and glue this to the front of the card. And again, it will measure the exact same size as the front of the card does. So let's take a closer look at our finished project, and these little critters are just amazing. I love them. They're so much fun to color in. I really enjoyed this project, and I love that you can use that bucket for just about anything. So I really hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please hit that like button and subscribe. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so that you don't miss a single video. Thanks so much for joining me today. I hope you all have a great day. Take care. Bye-bye.